Good morning, students. Today we will start with the second part of Political Science, Chapter 1, Power Sharing. In the previous class, we learned about ethnic composition in Belgium and Sri Lanka and the accommodation in Belgium. In today's class, we will discuss about why power sharing is desirable and the forms of power sharing. Now you can open your political science textbook, page number 6. Now we will start with the first subtopic, that is why power sharing is desirable. So in the previous class we learned that power sharing is important. It is practically not possible sitting in one area and control the entire world. So definitely at every level you would have power sharing that would occur. Power sharing is prudential as well as moral. So here it is explaining two reasons or else two types of power sharing, that is prudential power sharing, and the next is about moral power sharing. So first we will start with the prudential power sharing. So in prudential power sharing, we focus more on the outcomes. In prudential power sharing, we are focusing more on the outcomes. Prudential reasons are based on careful calculations of gains and losses. The prudential reasons for power sharing is a precautionary measure. This reason for power sharing is good. The prudential reason for power sharing is good because the power sharing help us to reduce the possibility of conflict. The power sharing help us to reduce the possibility of conflict in a country. So when the conflict in a country, when the conflict among the social group or else in any group, when it reduces, that leads to political stability. So if we have conflict in a country or violence in a country, that reduces to political instability. So here it is highlighting that the prudential power sharing is good because it helps to reduce the possibility of conflict between social groups. So power sharing is a good way to ensure political stability through competition among various parties. Reserved constituencies for minorities and women in assemblies and parliament. These are the best examples for prudential power sharing in India. The next is explaining about the moral power sharing. So moral power sharing is purely based on the moral considerations. So in the previous one, in the prudential power sharing, we said that the focus was on the outcomes. Here we are not focusing in moral power sharing. We are not focusing on the outcomes. Here we are focusing only on the moral considerations. So the moral reason of power sharing, it means it is the spirit of democracy. So that is the moral reason of power sharing. So it means how much benefits if we have a moral power sharing. If we use the idea of power sharing, what will be the benefit that I will get? What will be the negative consequences? So however, in moral power sharing, we will focus we will focus that, or else we will check that whether it is valuable or not. So having a spirit of democracy, that is the sole idea under the moral power sharing. So example for moral power sharing, it is the decentralization of powers in India. So that is the best example for moral power sharing. So it means here people have a right to be consulted on how they are to be governed. So according to moral reason, power sharing is desirable to produce an accountable, responsible and legitimate government. Now we will start with the next heading, that is the forms of. So here it is explaining 4 forms of power sharing. This is also very important for your examination point of view. We will start with the first one, that is the horizontal power sharing. So the first point is explained here is power is shared among different organs of government. Here it is explaining about horizontal power sharing. So let's analyze what is the meaning of horizontal power sharing. So in very simple terms, horizontal power sharing means power is shared among the different organs of the government. The different organs of the government you have learned in the 8th standard political science. So the different organs of the government is the executive, the judiciary and the legislative. So the power is shared among the three pillars of the government. The legislative, executive and judiciary. That is known as horizontal power sharing. So legislative, we know that legislative forms the law and the executive executes the law and the judiciary resolves the conflicts that occurs between them. So this form of power sharing that ensures none of the organ of the government gets unlimited power. Each organ keeps a check on the other. So that resulted in a balance of power among the various institutions. The judges are appointed by the executive. So they can check the functioning of executive or laws which is made by the legislature. So it means judiciary has the power to check as and when required. Judiciary having more dispersal of power during emergency purposes. So a good example for this is the Mumbai High Court has ordered the Maharashtra government to take an action to improve the living condition of 2,000 old children homes in Mumbai. So that's the kind of horizontal distribution of power. Next is the vertical division of power. So the second point is explaining that power can be shared among the government at different levels. So the power is shared among the different levels of government. This is known as the vertical division of power. So it means here the power is shared among the union government, state government and even at the local levels. Such kind of division of powers is known as vertical division of powers. Vertical division of power or else vertical form of power sharing means power is shared among the highest and the lowest authority of the government at different levels. So this is known as the vertical form of power sharing. So it means in this system or else vertical power sharing means the power is shared at the national, state and local levels. And in vertical form of power sharing, there is no concept of checks and balances. In the horizontal power sharing, we learned that there is checks and balances. But in the vertical form of power sharing, there is no checks and balances because powers are clearly given by the constitution from the highest level to the lowest level. So here the highest level means the central government and the lowest level means the municipality and the panchayat level. So in the vertical form of power sharing, the power is shared among the or else from the central level and to the lower level, that is to the municipality and to the panchayat level. So this kind of power sharing is known as vertical power sharing. Now we will check into the third form of power sharing. The third form of power sharing is among different social groups. The power is shared among the different social groups. So it means power is shared in a diverse country like India. There are various social, linguistic and caste groups. So the power is shared among each group. The power is shared among the social, linguistic as well as among the caste group in India. For example, in India, minorities, OBCs, scheduled caste and scheduled tribe are given a fair share in power. So this kind of power sharing is used to ensure adequate representation of each community. So here it is explaining about the community government. Community government. We learned that we saw in Belgium. So community government is a classic example as we saw in Belgium. Certain minority groups and certain linguistic groups had given power so as to represent themselves, or else they have a say in their own group. So this is known as a community government. The community government is elected by the people belonging to one language community. So in the previous class we learned that, as I said, Belgium is a classic example for the community government. So they're Dutch, French and German speaking. No matter where they live, this government has the power regarding cultural, education and language related issues related to this particular community. So this is known as community government. And the next point here, it is explaining about the reserved constituencies. Under reserved constituencies, what happens is there is a government that is in majority, trying to improve the scenario of that region by electing a representative who belongs to that community. This method is used to give minority communities a fair share in power. Now the next point, now the fourth point, the fourth form of power sharing. The fourth form of power sharing is explaining that power sharing among different political parties, pressure groups and movements. So in a democracy, power is shared among different political parties, pressure groups and movements. So democracies provide the citizens a choice to choose their representatives. So that is the prominent feature of a democratic form of government. In a democratic form of government, the people have the right to choose their representatives. So such a choice is provided by various political parties. So we know that in India we have multi-party system. We have various political parties in India. Who conduct elections and to win in the election. So such a competition. So in election in India's political system, we know that there is a competition between the multiple parties which is existing in India. So such a competition ensures that power does not remain in one hand and is shared among different political parties representing different ideologies and social groups. So that is the benefit in a multi-party system in India. So in India we have multi-party system where power is shared among the different political parties. It will not concentrate in one hand. So power will be shared among different political parties having different ideologies and social groups. The next heading is coalition government. So coalition government means it's a government which is formed by joining two or more parties when a single party is not able to get absolute majority in the legislature. So when a single party is not able to get the absolute majority in the legislature, then two or more parties will form the government. So this is known as coalition government. Example for coalition government. VP Singh's government was a good example of coalition government. And apart from the VP Singh's government, in India, the first coalition government to complete its full term was the Atal Bihari Vajpayee government, led National Democratic Alliance from 1999 to 2004. So this is the two prominent examples for coalition government in India. Now let's have a quick recap of today's class. Power sharing helps to reduce the possibilities of conflicts between various ethnic groups living in a society. Power sharing helps to ensure political stability, since a country can be run by all the communities without giving preference to any majority community. And power sharing also reduces violence and linguistic problems. In India, there is diversity in language, but our constitution gives equal weightage to all the languages. Power sharing is actually being called the true spirit of democracy. Power sharing helps to bring political, economic, social, and cultural stability to the nation. Power sharing may be shared among different social groups such as the religious and linguistic groups. In some countries, there are constitutional and legal arrangements whereby socially weaker sections and women are represented in the legislatures and administration. There is a system of reserved constituencies in our country. This type of arrangement is meant to give space in the government and administration to diverse social groups who otherwise would feel alienated from the government. This method is used to give minority communities a fair share in power. And there is a government called community government, and we learned that the best example from this chapter we learned about community government is Belgium. And this government is elected, the community government is elected by the people belonging to one language or community. Dutch, French and German speaking, no matter where they live. So this government has the power regarding to culture, education and language issues. These arrangements help to avoid a civic clashes and animosity between the two major communities and possible division of the country on linguistic lines. So now we completed Civics Chapter 1, Power Sharing. Hope you all understood today's class. You can go through the notes and write the notes in your notebook. In the next class, we will start Geography Chapter 1, Resources and Development. If you have any doubts on this chapter, you can mail to dmcsonlinequeries@gmail.com. Thank you, students. Have a nice day.